Today we are diving into a really fascinating text called the Book of Wisdom. Now, its big claim is that there's a single, hidden science that ties together spirituality, our own anatomy, and all the world's major religions. It's a pretty wild idea, so let's just jump right in.
So the book kicks off with this really provocative question. What if the ancient stories we all know aren't just history? What if they're actually allegorical maps of our own biology and our hidden potential? That's the lens we're going to be using as we explore what this book has to say. So where does an idea like this even begin? Well, according to the author, it all starts with the very fabric of our reality, which they claim is made of one thing and one thing only: light.
This is really the foundation of the whole thing. The book says that everything we see, everything we can touch, all matter is just light vibrating at a very low frequency. And if you raise that vibration, that same matter turns right back into light. So your mind, your body, your spirit, it's all just light at different speeds.
And this visual, well, it really helps drive that point home. We think we see the world as it really is, but when you look at the full electromagnetic spectrum, you realize that visible light is just this incredibly narrow sliver of what actually exists.
Yeah, 0.0035%. That is it. That's the tiny, tiny fraction of reality our eyes are actually equipped to see. So according to this text, the vast majority of the universe is completely invisible to us.
And of course, this brings us back to ourselves. The author does this fascinating wordplay, breaking down the word human into man, suggesting that we are quite literally beings of colored light. Every frequency our mind tunes into shows up as a different color. And the ultimate goal, they say, is to raise our vibration to violet, which is the highest frequency in the visible spectrum.
Okay, so if we're beings of light, how do we get to these higher frequencies? Well, this brings us to the real star of this internal story. The author claims our bodies produce a sacred substance that they call the Christ oil. The book claims that once every month, tied to a very specific astrological cycle, when the moon is in your sun sign, a special psychophysical oil is created right inside your brain. This isn't presented as some random event, but as a predictable cosmic process that's happening inside every single one of us.
Now, this whole process supposedly begins with what the author calls the Holy Family in the brain. The claustrum, which they nickname Santa Claus because it brings this precious gift, is what produces the fluid. Then it gets charged by two other structures. The pineal gland, which represents the masculine Joseph, gives it an electric charge. And the pituitary gland, the feminine Mary, gives it a magnetic charge.
From there, this oil goes on an absolutely incredible journey. As you can see here, it's created and charged up in the brain. Then it travels down the spinal cord all the way to the sacrum, where it rests for a couple of days. And finally, if it's been preserved, it starts its journey all the way back up, triggering a kind of rebirth in the brain. This journey, this is the roadmap for the entire allegory.
So, let's follow that journey, starting with the descent. After being created up in the brain, which the author calls heaven, the oil travels down into the body, which is, you guessed it, Earth.
And this is where the anatomical parallels get really, really specific. The author suggests that our spinal cord is the biblical river Jordan. The oil, our symbolic Jesus, travels down this river to the sacrum bone at the very base of the spine, which represents the Dead Sea. Now, this resting phase is absolutely critical. The oil waits in the sacrum, the cave, for 2 to 3 days. Sound familiar? It's a direct parallel to Jesus' time in the tomb. This is that crucial moment where the oil is either preserved for its journey back up or it's wasted. All right, so if the oil is preserved, we get to the really exciting part, the ascent. This is the resurrection, the journey back up the ladder to heaven. So how in the world does it get back up? Well, the text introduces the concept of Kundalini, a super powerful dormant spiritual energy that's often shown as a coiled serpent at the base of the spine. The author claims that by preserving this sacred oil, this Kundalini force awakens, vaporizes the oil, and literally propels it upwards.
And the author pulls in other traditions to back this up. For instance, Jacob's ladder from the book of Genesis, which you see a lot in Masonic art, is interpreted not as some literal ladder, but as a symbol for the human spinal cord, the true stairway to heaven.
And the numbers here are key. As this vaporized oil rises, it passes the 33 vertebrae of the spine. The author argues this is absolutely not a coincidence, but the true meaning behind the story of Jesus living for 33 years. Each vertebra represents 1 year in the journey. And that brings us to the final climactic stage of this whole journey,
the completion of the ascent, what the author calls being born again.
Okay, this is maybe the most striking parallel in the entire book, the crucifixion. The text claims this happens when the ascending oil reaches a critical intersection point in the brain, where the optic thalamus meets the vagus nerve. And if you look at a diagram of those nerves, they actually form a cross shape. This, the author says, is the true crucifixion at Golgotha, the place of the skull. But, and this is so important, this isn't about death, not at all. In this interpretation, the crucifixion is the ultimate moment of transformation. It's an alchemical process that illuminates the brain, it turns physical matter back into pure spirit, and it completely resurrects the individual. So what's the payoff for all this? Well, according to the author, the rewards are profound. Dormant areas of the brain are unlocked, your brain capacity supposedly expands from 10% to 100%, the cells of your body are regenerated, you start to manifest your true God self, and you even unlock supernatural abilities like astral travel. And you know, the entire text really circles back to this one powerful idea, which is quoted from the Bible itself. The message is that divinity, salvation, heaven, they aren't external places or figures. They're an internal state of being, and they're accessible through the biological temple that is the human body. So in the end, this book offers a pretty radical rereading of ancient wisdom, reframing it as a kind of biological instruction manual for human consciousness. And it leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. What changes in our understanding of ourselves if we start to see these sacred stories not just as history, but as a map to our own inner potential?